Good evening, everybody. How are we doing? See, I'm already getting flack in the chat. Thanks, you're the best. Just starting up for some technical stuff, getting things going. How are we all doing tonight? We're here for spooky stories. Yay! I'm gonna go switch over to the main stream. I am gonna be drawing in between doing reading. And then let's get you introduced to my partner today. He's over here. This is my husband. This is Torvil. He's gonna be here reading some of his actual written stories for us tonight. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Don't be shy.
No, I should be shy.
No, you shouldn't be shy. Tor is actually the one working on our tabletop setting, customizing it over for it to run on its own system, and he's the one who did most of the masterwork behind the character creation and world creation for Nestrilia Ashes and Blood. This is his dungeon master avatar I have on here that I did up for him. But anything you want to say? You want to plug anything early on?
I mean, not really, no. Don't got too much going on yet.
Just gonna check, make sure. Can you guys hear Tor? I know I've got some people in chat that can let me know. No! Stop it. Tor, I need you to talk again.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, okay. It is picking you up, which is good. I'm not the tech savvy one of the family. That is him, so I had to make sure that we were actually getting some sort of sound. What about the background music? Is the background music too quiet, guys? Can you hear it at all, or is it too loud? Can you hear him too much on my mic? Oh my god, these slow chatters. I don't know. Alright, gonna start doing some plugs. You know the drill. If you want to support the channel, you like what we do, you want to see us do more of it, you can come over and join us at patreon.com. The link is in the chat. If you guys want to pay, you can. If you want to just come and join us in the Discord for free, that is also acceptable. We can't get any bigger if we don't have the funding, so we do appreciate it for every person that decides they want to pay us. Thank you. Secondly, this is the Discord chat if y'all want to come and join us there. And we will post those intermittently throughout the evening. The plan for tonight is for each of us to read at least 3 things. If y'all have any suggestions on things you would like to hear us read, that is also acceptable. I have kind of stuck to traditional poetry for the night, so we're going to be reading some Edgar Allan Poe, and then also going to be reading The Earl King. So that's kind of the plan tonight, and then Tor is going to be reading 3 of his short stories. And I have far too much snark in the chat. Thank you for this. You at least are keeping me entertained, if nothing else. Go tell Blake to stop playing PlanetSide and come and chat with us. How dare he play PlanetSide tonight? Oh my god, not the tomatoes. No. Please, no. I was nice to you. I worked on your art today. So terrible. Absolutely horrible. What? What? Don't give me that. Don't give me that. Alright, that's acceptable. Go after the guest. The guest is the one that you are allowed to go after. I will accept this. We give him a warm welcome. Warm welcome of tomatoes flying in his general direction. Alright. I don't have any real... What?
You heard me. I said rude.
Rude. Oh my god. How dare. I will dare. I will dare all over the place. I suppose that I should probably start. Give Tor a little bit of time to warm up his vocal cords, as it were. We'll give you a little bit of time in between readings and stuff if you guys feel like chatting and whatnot. Tell me how horribly I read things, you know, stuff like that. That's acceptable. But that's where we'll start, and we'll go from there. The first one I am going to read is going to be Annabelle Lee, which is personally one of my favorite Poe pieces. It has been for a lot of years. I know it's kind of depressing and all that, but it's also a love story. So we're going to go from there, and we'll start it off right now. So this is Annabelle Lee by Edgar Allan Poe, published originally in 1849. It was many year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived whom you may know by the name of Annabelle Lee. And this maiden, she lived with no other thought than to be loved, and be loved by me. She was a child, and I was a child, in this kingdom by the sea, but we loved with a love that was more than love, I and Annabelle Lee, with a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that, long ago, in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud by night, chilling my Annabelle Lee, so that her high-born kinsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of a cloud chilling and killing my Annabelle Lee. But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, for many far wiser than we, and neither the angel in heaven above nor the demons down under the sea can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabelle Lee, and the stars never rise but I see the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. And so, all the night tide I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre by the sea, in her tomb by the side of the sea. And that was Annabelle Lee by Edgar Allan Poe. It's a very touching tale of a man who loved his girl and loved her greatly enough to be there with her even in death. So if anyone has any questions or commentary, feel free. If not, I will turn it over to Tor, and he can explain the next piece of literature we are going to listen to.
So, way back in the day, I writing Patreon. It's slightly been rebranded now. We may plug it later, who knows? Probably not. And I was given a challenge to kind of find some interesting prompts, and one of them that I found was forbidden information and or, well, actually it was two. It's forbidden information and then creation run amok. This story has no actual title. It is based off of those themes. It is a cosmic horror story, if you could call it cosmic horror. I enjoy writing about esoterics and kind of occult slash cosmic, kind of beyond humanity's knowing. So this story very much kind of emphasizes those themes. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. The room was quiet as she entered, holding an almost pervasive chill that certainly made her think twice about going forward with this idea, but money was money, and money was something she desperately needed. The deal had been a situation of right place, right time, right level of desperation. Her obligations and expenses just kept piling and piling up, and the money she was making from this deal was going to go a long way to getting her not only back on her feet, but possibly even thriving. Her contact, or at least she hoped it was her contact, was standing in the shadows by the far wall. "Do you have what I asked for?" The male voice of her contact growled. "I do hope you didn't run into any complications." She hated his voice. There was an unnatural, unreal grit and growl to it that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. Normal people did not have voices that reminded you of stone grinding against stone. Still, she reached into her coat and produced what he had tasked her to acquire. I can English today. What she had been in the right place at the right time to procure. Holding out the heavy, leather-bound tome to him, she nodded. "Right here," she said, as promised. "My payment?" "In the case by the door," the growl sounded. "Unmarked small bills, non-sequential, as per your own request. Leave the book on the floor." She nodded and leaned down carefully and placed the book on the floor, and slowly backed out, breaking her sight on the room only long enough to identify the case, only grabbing it and pulling it out the door with her. Then she turned and ran, having no desire to see what someone whose voice sounded entirely wrong would want with the information contained in that book. The information it contained was, as far as anyone had told her, forbidden to human eyes. She had even opened it to be sure it was the one he'd asked for, only to find that the entire thing was empty, completely void of any and all text. So if whatever it contained was so dangerous to humans that it was forbidden to be seen, she had no desire to stick around and find out what this strange, probably not at all human, was going to do with it. The only warning she had that things were about to go very, very badly was the low, painful hum that shot through her body, causing her nose to bleed and her vision to change to static for what felt like only a few seconds, but was most likely a minute or more by the time she picked herself up off the ground. But even as she got up onto her knees, she knew everything was wrong. The air tasted dry and full of ozone, and there was the faint scent of fine dust burning in the back of her nose. She covered her nose, trying to stem the tide of blood and prevent herself from sneezing more of it onto the stone floor. Stone floor that had been tile when she'd walked into it. She felt around for the case she'd been carrying, only to find that it had either been lost under the nearby rubble around her, or it hadn't come with her to whatever place this was. Lovely. She should have known better than to trust anything, that promised that much money for a book that was probably some sort of Eldritch artifact. Taking her blouse, she wiped the blood off her face and hands. The less of a trail she left for anything to follow her, the better, at least until she figured out where she was. She forced herself onto her feet, carefully walking forward in the gloom of the stone hallway. She had no light to speak of, so she groped blindly forward in the dark, until the faint hint of light began to make itself known in front of her. Her mind conjured up some sort of eldritch anglerfish, luring the lost into its lair with the hope of freedom. But what other choice did she have? Step by step, she made her way toward the only sign of freedom, and felt the dread welling up in her stomach with each movement forward. Reaching the source of the light, an open stone archway, she gawked in awe at what she saw beyond. Stepping out of the archway, she stood on a large stone promenade. The sky was a vibrant deep blue, and off to her right, a seemingly endless sea of bright golden sand extended out to the horizon. Impossibly large stone towers intermittently broke up the sea of endless sand, cyclopean edifices of polished stone, worn smooth by the constant sandblasting of the dunes below. If the stones had ever borne any sign of civilization upon them, the sand had long since blasted it away. But there were certainly no but they were certainly no natural formations, as she could see the perfect lines that hinted at each block had been worked to right angles before time and wind had polished even those away. The promenade before her, too, was polished smooth, as sand whipped across the surface in patches and puddles. She moved carefully forward, eyes still trying to find a source of the light that seemed to be coming from all angles at once. It was strange to move in a place without shadows, not even her own, no matter how she tried to cast one. But she carried on, slowly and surely, trying to sort out the strangeness of this place she now found herself in. There seemed to be no signs of life, even as the promenade gave way to another great stone structure, almost square were it not for the sandblasting of the endless sand. There were countless portals, stone archways that seemingly led only back into the darkness from which she had only just minutes before extracted herself. The exterior light did not seem to venture past the threshold of these alcoves, their darkness seemingly pushing back against the pervasive, all-encompassing light. The darkness beyond the portals scared her, an ancestral fear baked into her instincts as a primate. Something about it was just as off as the ever-present light around her, perhaps even more so. The square structure seemed to be the only other place in the space that she could reach without lowering herself over the side of the promenade and onto the golden sands below. At least a 50-foot drop, if not higher. She trusted the sand even less than she trusted the stone and the darkness around her. Just because there were no signs of life here, much like the sea, there could be so much more, so much worse, beneath what she could not see. Finally, she steeled herself and her courage enough to enter one of the stone archways. Walking forward down what she hoped was just a straight hallway with no curves or corners. As soon as she crossed the threshold, she immediately regretted her choice and debated turning back as the darkness enveloped her completely. So intense was the sudden shift that she wasn't sure if she was blinded by the change or if it was just that dark within the confines of the stone structure. She forced herself to carry on, feet moving forward as she tried to prevent the rising panic in her chest from spilling over, from making her do something foolish, like run and smash herself into an unseen wall or impediment. She walked for minutes, hours, days. Time seemed to lose meaning in the darkness. Her mouth was dry and parched, but she felt no need to drink or eat. Surely there was time here. The edifices showed signs of the passage of time, of the wearing down of stone by sand. Or had they just popped into existence, already worn and polished and smooth? Was any of this real? Was she laying face first on a tile floor, having some sort of seizure or fit? And these visions were the last gasps of her dying brain. She had no answers, only endless questions that seemingly could not be answered. The book had been blank. Each page had held no writing, no sign of pen or print. Had she done something horrible, given the stranger the book? Had she doomed not only herself, but the rest of the world to some sort of oblivion? All for money to solve problems she herself had created with poor life choices? Humans were greedy animals by nature. It was a survival trait. What is useful? Consume what you can, when you can. Could she be blamed for acting on basic human impulse? Would anyone know? Had the strange sound that had made her nose bleed and then herself fall unconscious for even the briefest of moments changed everything all at once? Or was it rippling out slowly, converting the world at the speed of sound, a terrible silent roar of a maleficent rage, snuffing out the old world and creating a new, terrible cyclopean horror in its place? Questions, with no answers. Once more light began to shine ahead, and she increased her pace. Covering her eyes as she exited the darkness this time, the light felt more harsh now, more pervasive, and yet there was still no sign of source or location. No shadows fell around her as she let her vision adjust to the brightness. Looking around her, she was once more on a stone promenade, but the pillars on it, bleh, but the pillars out in the sand were far shorter now, more worn, more eaten away. But what drew her gaze the most was the large wall before her. It towered over the promenade like an angry god, impossibly tall, and gazing down its length, seemingly endless as well. What was more pressing to her attention was the fact that this wall was not smoothly polished like the other stone surfaces. A fine script, nothing she recognized as any writing or hieroglyphics she's ever seen, had been firmly etched into the stone. The longer she stared at the script, the less and less she wanted to. The more and more she started to feel panic again rising up in her chest, as she realized that, while unrecognized and alien, she knew that if she focused on the script, she'd be able to read it. How she knew this, she wasn't sure, but deep in her soul, she knew that reading the script was something she should not do. Yet another part of her, the curious part, wanted to know, drove her to look, to read, to acknowledge what was written here in the stone. She had moved without realizing it. Her hands touched the script, fingers tracing the lines of alien writing as she began to read, slowly at first, but gaining speed with each curve, each tilted line, each moment of comprehension of what she was reading. Words she could never utter, things she now wished she had never seen filled her mind, her thoughts. The alien script consumed her, just as much as she consumed it. It was not meant for human eyes, for human minds. The truths it contained, the lies, the fundamental axioms, and the equally incomprehensible fallacies, stripped away her humanity, her logic, her emotions, and her form. She realized she'd been doomed from the start, that all of creation had led to this moment, and yet had been running from it since its birth. These forbidden truths, these alien words, so foreign and yet comprehensible, had not been meant for mortal minds to bear. In the moment of knowing, she became unknowable, immutable, and terrible to behold. Reality had shattered upon the revelation of truths no human mind was meant to comprehend, and yet understood innately to be true. She had destroyed everything. She had created everything. She was the beginning, and she was also the end. She was formless, yet solid, shadow, but light, everything and nothing, because the words before her were both prophecy and lies. In that moment of realizing the ultimate truth, the true lie, reality imploded inwards, yet also exploded outward. The universe ceased to be, and yet was born. Two states of simultaneous existence and non-existence occurred, and the cycle began anew. But the stone wall remained, the stone promenade outside of time and space, the repository of forbidden truths and lies, grew taller and wider as once more creation ran its ceaseless course and entropy fought to destroy it. Yeah, that's my first one. I've got two more in the pocket. Uh, Two more a little bit more Lovecraftian and a bit more standard fare. Also, I see you there. I see what you did. You haven't even read Hellcurse.
Shush.
Shush.
I saw it when he wrote it, and I'm like, oh no, the shade has begun. How dare you? How dare you indeed? Wasn't it good? I told you, he's really, really, really good at it. Alright, so moving from cosmic horror into the dark world of the Fae. The next one I'm going to read for you guys is the Earl King. I mean, shade is accepted. And I know this one will be particularly one that you enjoy. 12, you'll enjoy it. Because I'm pretty sure you've at least read it once. So this is The Earl King by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. What? Page unresponsive. Get out of here. Alright. The Earl King. Who's riding so late through the endless wild? The father 'tis with his infant child. He thinks the boy's well off in his arm. He grasps him tightly. He keeps him warm. My son, say, why are you hiding your face? Oh, father, the Earl King's coming apace. The Earl King's here with his train and crown. My son, the fog moves up and down. Be good, my child, come, go with me. I know nice games will play them with thee, and flowers thou'lt find near by where I live, pretty dress my mother will give. Dear father, oh father, do you not hear what the Earl King whispers so close to my ear? Be quiet, do be quiet, my son. Through leaves the wind is rustling anon. Do come, my darling, oh come with me. Good care my daughters will take of thee. My daughters will dance about thee in a ring, will rock thee to sleep, and will prettily sing. Dear father, oh father, and do you not see the Earl King's daughters so near to me? My son, no one's in our way. The willows are looking unusually gray. I love thee, thy beauty I covet and choose. Be willing, my darling, or force I shall use. Dear father, oh father, he seizes my arm. The Earl King, father, has done me harm. The father shudders, he darts through the wild. With agony fill him the groans of his child. He reached his farm with fear and dread. The infant son in his arms was dead. And that was The Earl King. A warning to those that travel outside at night in the cold. Be careful, because the Fae are often watching. And they will take that which is most dear to you. And then some of us are more willing to give you our blessings rather than our burdens, as it were. So, the Fae can take you, that's fine. Come to the Mothlight. Come to the Mothlight, my friend, and give me all your creative energy. Come. One more Mothlight to my collection. You know what? Don't worry. D&D is coming. The Earl King will show you. The Earl King will show you 110%, sir. I'll just get him and the Doulahan in the same place. And then you'll see what happens. So rude. All right. Well, we went from spooky in sense of whoo ghost spooky to let's see what happens when one's mind is the problem. And I'll turn it over to Tor for the next bit of philosophical horror, as it were.
So, this one, I guess is more. I would say this one's more Lovecraftian. This one also doesn't technically have a title. I guess the theme would technically kind of be the title. But the theme was, I have done something terrible and must pay for it with my sanity. Um, this is actually, it had actually originally started out as just a normal, just one-shot short story. I hadn't really planned to run with it. And then I ended up getting another prompt a little bit later. And I think the prompt to that one, I'll have to go and pop and check. Yeah, the prompt to that one was Not All Stories End. And so I ended up making the second one a continuation of this one. So I'll start with this one, and then we'll roll into the second one after Rhea reads her next piece. With that, go ahead and learn about the Abernathy Estate. The Abernathy Estate was a large palatial mansion that had been painstakingly carved into the side of Taggerty Mountains. It had been kept in the Abernathy family since its construction in 1757, and had passed from father to son in a solid line of succession. The Abernathys had been a strange clan, always in the town of Taggart. Oh, I'm sorry, I completely whiffed that sentence. Anyone in the town of Taggart could have told you that. The owners of the estate had kept to themselves mostly, usually sending the house staff into town to procure any of the needs of the house. A drive of no less than 20 minutes along a series of S-curves so sharp they might as well be 90-degree turns. The current keeper of the Abernathy estate, and likely its last, as he had never married and had no children, was Archibald Abernathy, an 80-year-old professor of antiquities. Archibald sat, as he often did, as the evening began to wear on, before the fire in his study, fingers moving slowly over the soft leather of a book in front of him. He had lost count of the number of visitors, some scholars, others, very much not, who had come to see the book, to read it, to try and make sense of the neat script handwriting that had been contained wherein. His handwriting, though he could not recall ever writing in the book, let alone any of the fantastical details. It was an oddity, to be sure, an oddity that had been vexing him more and more as of late, especially given that each time he opened the book a new entry would be marked near the back, and it was starting to run out of pages. A part of him was very afraid of what would happen should the book run out of space to write in. He was already He'd already sent it to a printer to have it rebound with more blank pages. Any more, and he'd have to have it rebound entirely, and he had no desire to spend that sort of money on something that was, by and large, a mystery that he had no real desire to solve. Flipping open the book, he reached the place where there had been an entry a week prior, only to find that the next page contained not only a new entry, but worse, the ink still had the faint shine of being freshly put to paper. His eyes ran over the date of the entry, and he nearly threw the book across the room and into the fireplace. The entry had been dated for that very day. 1935, 06, 25. I have made a terrible mistake. A grave and terrible mistake that I do not think I can justify having made save for my own hubris. They have seen me. They know of my existence, and by proxy, our existence. And now it is only a matter of time before they begin sniffling at the door. A door I thought could be shut tightly, but I now realize has been wedged open by my error. I have braced and warded it as best I can, but it is only a matter of time before they realize that we are on the other side and break through what I have managed to construct. If your gods are kind, then I hope they exist. If they are cruel, I hope that they do not. I am sorry. I have damned us all. Take solace that I will be the first to go. The entry was written in his hand, neat and concise, and it was all Archibald could do to not close it and toss it into the fireplace, to forget that it existed at all. He pulled open his drawer, only to freeze, as where his writing materials usually would be, was a new revolver that he had never seen before. His hand was shaking as he reached down and picked it up, opening the cylinder, not sure why he knew how to do so, and almost dropped it when he saw the 6 bullets loaded in the gun. Also in the drawer was a box of ammunition for the revolver, and with an uneasy ease, he closed the cylinder and put the weapon back in the drawer, pushing it closed very carefully as he tried to get his beating heart to calm down. He'd never owned a gun in his life. He'd never seen the need for one, ever. The Abernethys had made their wealth through the mining and timber business here in Taggarty Mountains, and he'd never wanted or needed a thing in his life. It was why he'd been able to pursue antiquities, become a scholar of history. His shaking hands rested on the top of the desk as he tried to get control of himself, so he closed his eyes and forced himself to breathe. When he opened them again a moment later, he almost jumped out of his chair in shock. Resting next to the journal was the gun from the drawer, and the journal was open. A new fresh ink marked the page. 1935, 06, 25. My attempts to bolster the wards on the blech. My attempts to bolster the wards on the way have all ended in abject failure. For my shame, I should take my life if it would not speed up the end for everyone else. My mind is already starting to fragment. The cost of maintaining the barrier against which is pushing in is starting to cause me periods of blackness. Holes of time, significant spans of it, in my mind. I had started this journal in the hopes of maintaining some semblance of order, but either my other mental fragments are too aghast at what they find inside these pages, or they have been rendered so mad as to think that they are not but flights of fancy. Know, however, know whoever finds this once I am gone, either by my hand or theirs, that I tried, but the cost was far more than I expected, and in the end, despite it all, I failed, and for that I am sorry. A trifle, I know, as I was the one who blundered us all into this. But again, know that it has stripped me of everything that I am, was, and never could be. Archibald felt his breathing coming at a rapid, ragged pace, as if he had been running a marathon, but he hadn't moved a single inch since he closed his eyes. Had he? He reached up to wipe the sweat off his brow, frowning as he placed his hand back on the desk. Surely this was madness, flights of fancy from, what, working too hard? He had been working on his paper a bit too long lately. Perhaps that was it. An ice break. Maybe a day or two, just resting in the garden watching the town below. He rose slowly, sighing as he moved to close the book in front of him. A mystery for another day. The air split apart, like a door opening. Perfect, neat, clean lines in space as he stared blankly at the impossibility beyond. For what he saw was impossible, incomprehensible, and in no way describable. Fragments of memory and knowledge slammed into his mind. Words, foreign and painful, came to his lips unbidden, even as his hand went to the gun on the desk. He felt the blood leaking from his eyes, his ears, his nose, his mouth, but something in him told him to keep repeating the words that he did not know or recognize, a litany against whatever it was that was going to come through the impossible door. A horror, a terror so wrong and twisted as to be impossible to describe. The words were not enough. He could feel himself faltering, his heart weakening as the thing began to push through the doorway. Impossible in its size and strength, infinite and horrible. His fingers gripped the gun on the desk, brought it up and began to fire. After 6 rounds, his words now a fevered shout of pain and terror and confusion. He dug for the ammunition, loading the gun again as the thing in the doorway slowly oozed its way to reality. Impossible incomprehensibility becoming real as he fired round after round of lead into the thing. Finally, with the gun spent, and the thing having slithered and clawed its way halfway into the room, reaching out to him with a hand, tendril, claw, and talon, he sank into the chair, meeting the beast eye to eye. "Forgive me," he croaked. "Oh gods, forgive me." And then, Archibald Abernathy was no more. The impossible thing paused, scented around with tendril and maw and nose. It looked with eyes and other senses no mortal man could know. Sated, for now, it slithered back, impossibly fast, impossibly wrong, through the open door, pulling it closed behind it, and leaving just the hint of a gap, leaving but a hint of a gap open for the next prey. So yeah, a little bit more Lovecraftian on that one. That one's a little darker.
The best kind of dark. I want you to write an entire book series about the Abernathys now.
Yeah,
about that.
What? They're intriguing. The entire thing is intriguing.
You'll see in the
next story.
I don't think you've ever actually read the next one to me. I only remember this one. So it'll be interesting to see where you take it with the next part. Okay. Come on, Abernathy is great. Archibald Abernathy, let's go. I give you permission to throw tomatoes at him the next time we see him. I mean, true, not even the best Archie. I will give you that. How are we doing, guys? Are we enjoying this? I'm running out of material. I honestly will take suggestions if you guys want me to read anything else. The next one that we have is an old favorite, guys. And probably one that, if you know anything about poetry, people can probably recite by heart. We're going to read Poe's the Raven. Because what kind of Halloween stream would it be without the Raven, right? If I had more dedication, I would read some of the short stories that he has done, but I don't think my voice could hold out quite that long. But we are going to do the whole of the Raven, provided that I don't start tripping over my words. And even then, you'll hear a lot of blah 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 before I can clear it out. So here we go. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as though someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought us its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my book surcease of sorrow for the lost Lenore. For the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came a-rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wandering, feeling, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal had ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. "Surely," I said, "surely this is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart still be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mine of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven." Ghastly grim the ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. "Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marvelled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven sitting lonely on the placid bust spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, "Doubtless," I said, "what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore." But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking that this ominous bird of yore, with this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of lore, meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat enraged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This the more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. "Wretch," I cried, "thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this nepenthe, and forget the lost Lenore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Prophet," I said, "thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on the home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm of Gilead? Tell me, I implore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Prophet," I said, "thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by heaven that bends above us, by the God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden who the angels name Lenore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." "Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend," I shrieked, upstarting, "get thee back to the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as token of the lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form off my door." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on that pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that's dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the door shall be lifted nevermore. And I think that was honestly my first time managing to read all of that through without bumbling it too badly. I really, really love Poe, and as proof by the fact that I have probably about 3 to 5 different versions of his poetry and prose in my collection in my library. So people know what to get me if they know if they have to get me a book. Just pick me up a nice illustrated copy of Poe's works and I'm happy. Yeah, you'd be a depressed, cringy drama tween too if you went through some of the shit that man had. Okay? Man was coping with his depression, alright? Let's not even get started on what Telltale Heart has to say about a person. Wow! Remind me if I ever start doing Renaissance work, I'm just gonna, like, call you up as my personal heckler. I need me some heckles up in here. What? What? All right. If the heckler is done heckling, we'll return to, Archibald Abernathy and the Abernathy estate and find out what happened in the second installment of this Eldritch horror, as it were.
I mean, eh, I'll- the theme is not all stories end, as it were. Uh, you'll have to forgive me on this one. There's definitely some dialect in it, so I'm gonna mangle some words. With that being said, we are revisiting the Abernathy estate uh, after a couple of years. And here we go. You the lot heading up to the old Abernathy estate? The old man asked the handful of people as they stood next to the beat-up old military surplus truck that sat on the street just outside his store. If any of you sods were smart, you'd turn around and head back to where you came from. Nothing good ever comes from the old Abernathy estate. A man turned from the group. He appeared to be middle-aged and wore a three-piece tweed suit, and he tipped his trilby to the old man. We have a vested interest in the estate, he said, his voice holding that hint of a British accent being reined in by practice. I'm Professor Edward Blanche, and these are my associates. It has come to my understanding that the estate's ownership has fallen into the care of the township, has it not? As was the stipulation in the final owner's will, yes, the old man replied with a nod. Even so, it's best to leave the place be. It doesn't like visitors. You talk like the house is alive or something, said a grizzled, rough-looking man who was leaning on the truck. Blanche, this better not be a repeat of Milan, or I swear to Christ I'll shove my fist so far up your ass. Stow it, Price, a stone-faced woman in dark makeup said in a sharp tone. We're here, no sense in chickening out now, or are you yella? Blanche raised a hand for silence, and the two simmered back down, though the man, Price, was watching the professor more coldly now than he had prior. That would be our vested interest in the estate, Blanche said. I am a professor of paranormal metaphysics. You lot a bunch of those ghost hunter types, then? The old man said with a derisive sniff. Well then, since I'll never be able to talk a lick of sense into you, might as well go see the mayor. He's the one with the key to the estate. Thank you for your time, good sir, Blanche said, before turning back towards the truck and motioning everyone into the vehicle. You could thank me by turning around and getting the hell out of here, the old man grumped, but beyond shaking his head and muttering, said nothing else as he made his way back to his little shop. As the truck began its drive towards the center of town, those not in the cab leaned back against the seats in the back of the truck, covered as it was from the cloudy sky by the olive tarp. Never thought a little haunting would be enough to send the vaunted Richard Price running for the hills, the woman said again with a smirk, trying and failing to light her cigarette for a third time, only to blink as Price snatched the lighter from her hand, flicked it to life in one easy motion, and lit it for her. Hauntings ain't ever little, Price rumbled from his seat as he handed her back the lighter. You weren't at Milan, Odette. Hell, you probably were still running around selling matches when we were dealing with the Nazis and their bullshit. Milan cost us Ophelia, our last medium. Some aren't cut out for the channeling of the dead. It unnerves them, Odette began. She got possessed and then slit her own throat with piano wire, Price offered coolly. And that was after we had Father O'Malley perform an exorcism. We lost him too. Dumb waiter. Price made a chopping motion with his hand, and the already pale Odette grew even more so. So what I say, if this is like Milan, and I'm going to shove my hand so far up his ass as to make him a puppet, he knows I mean it, the bastard, Price growled. He picked you up 'cause you have real talent, like Ophelia did, and I hope you got a stronger mind than she did, or have the sense to retire when you start feeling it go. Odette nodded but looked away from Price, shivering a bit as she took a long drag on her cigarette and tried to make sense of everything. Truck stopped only a few minutes later in front of the Taggart Town Hall. She heard the cab door open and shut, and heard the even footsteps of Blanche make his way into the building. The truck turned off, and she heard the other cab door open. A few minutes later, the back of the truck was blocked by the shadow of their driver. Father Brighton was a rather imposing figure, tall, broad of shoulder, with the dark brown skin worn and leathered that marked him as a man who is not above earthly labor. His eyes were bright and amber brown, and his smile was one of the kindest and true Odette had ever encountered. He wasn't the first black man Odette had ever met, but he was one of the kindest and gentlest she had come to know. Blanche had recruited him from one of the few southern churches they had driven through on their way up to Taggart. I do hope you aren't giving poor Miss Odette any ill notion of our venture now, sir, Father Brighton said, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to be holding back a laugh at all times. While I'm none too keen on Professor Blanche's area of study, I must admit that I've heard my fair share of stories coming out of the Abernathy estate, and it'd be good to settle the place down, if only for a little while. Price just shrugged his shoulders. I'm just an old washed-up war vet. What do I know? He said with a grin that implied that he knew far more than he let on. I take Blanche went to bribe the keys out of the mayor? More like ask politely for them, but yes, Brighton said, hauling himself into the back of the truck to sit for a moment. He said it might be a good few minutes, so I figured I'd check up on my passengers, see how they're doing. We're well, Father, Odette said, looking up from her thoughts as she took another drag on her cigarette. You know of the estate? The way the professor made it sound, it was relatively untouched. Rumors, hearsay, stories passed from the townfolk, Father Brighton said with a wave of a hand. Mostly about the Abernethys, how they were odd ducks who rarely if ever left the estate save for schooling, and even most of that was private tutors up until college. Strange house, full of strange folk, Price said with a snort. Sounds like the kind of place Blanche would want to stick his nose around in, probably hoping they left behind a few books that he hasn't read yet. Why do you work for the professor if you don't like him? Odette finally asked Price, looking over at him with a frown. I can feel it coming off you like a cloud, the venom and hatred for him. Makes it hard, and I wonder if you've come along just hoping for an excuse to push him down a dumbwaiter yourself. Price's normal roguish smile dimmed and he looked at Brighton. He simply shrugged his shoulders before turning his gaze to Odette. I stick around primarily to keep pretty young girls like you safe, he said, raising a finger and pointing it at her. The second is that I owe him, more than I care to recount right now. But if this trip isn't the hell pit I think it's going to be, I'll tell you all about what he and I did against the Nazis in Sicily. Now that was some fucked up shit. Odette watched him for a moment, but when he leaned back against the seat and let his head rest against the canvas tarp of the truck's cover, she let it be. Turning instead to Father Brighton, who she noticed had started to move out of the back of the truck and towards the front cab, she could hear Blanche's footsteps returning. Got the keys, Father? The professor said with a grin, spinning in the ring of them on his fingers, making them jingle. Shall we? The truck was started again, in short order, and Odette found herself feeling more and more gloomy as she watched the scene behind them give way from a cheery, small Americana town to the beginnings of the Rocky Mountain switchbacks that signaled the ascent into the Abernathy estate. Withered shrubs and trees that otherwise gave way to lifeless gray-black stone that did little to improve her mood. No thanks to Price's horror stories. True to the rumors, though, it was a solid 20-minute ascent by truck. She didn't even want to think of the navigating the road at night, or worse, on foot. But soon they stood in front of the imposing, unkept Abernathy estate. She was surprised to find a small front garden that was fenced off, giving anyone who chose to sit there a rather scenic view of the town below. It was an odd touch, to a family that seemed to be keen on privacy, to wish to look over the people down below. But maybe it was a wealthy person thing, she wouldn't know. The front of the mansion, that wasn't buried into the stone of the mountain itself, composed itself of 3 wings, each of which looked to be 3 stories high. Her mind wondered if perhaps the family had mined into the mountains and built more house. But they but if they had, it wasn't visible from the front. The professor hopped out of the truck from where they had secured it in the front drive, and with a jingle of keys, almost sprinted for the door, one hand holding his trilby in place as he hurriedly found the front door key and unlocked the house. Father Brighton had come to assist Odette in hopping out of the back of the truck when she heard a low groan of wood against wood, and turned back to see Price having pulled a wooden case out from under his seat. Her lips creased into a deep frown as she realized what was in the case. Will that really be necessary, Mr. Price? She asked, her hand on her hips as she stared up at the old soldier as he crashed to the back of the truck, loading a shotgun with shells. The townsfolk said the house is empty. Surely you don't think there are any squatters who would take umbrage to our investigation. Better to be loaded for bear and not need it than not have it and need it, Price said, letting the gun rest on his knee as he loaded his breast pocket with a handful of shells before closing the case and standing up, keeping the gun in both hands as he hopped out the back of the truck. Be prepared and all that jazz. His gaze turned to Father Brighton and he smiled. Would you like a piece, Father? He asked in a polite, respectful tone. I have a 1911 I keep as backup, and I can smell the war on you a mile away. The priest shook his head, but said, After it was over, I turned over a new leaf. My time for violence on this earth is done. All right, Price said, not making an argument of it. Odette frowned but said nothing, instead moving past the 2 men to approach the house that Blanche had managed to open in the meantime. He stood on the stoop, waiting for them to join him. The closer she got to the house, the more and more she could feel the telltale signs of a haunting. Already she was cold, even as the sun was still bright, and she knew that it was decently warm out. There was malevolence to the place. The townsfolk below had been correct. This house was not found of visitors. She saw for a brief moment a face in the 3rd-story window on the western wing of the house. What appeared to be an older gentleman, of course. His visage was gone as soon as she let her eyes fully rest upon the space, but it was enough to tell her that at least one spirit resided within the halls of the Abernathy estate, unable to move on. She watched as Brighton and Price, walked past her, and she increased the pace of her steps, even if each one was making her skin crawl. She had a bad feeling about this place. Price was the first to enter the house, shotgun resting easily in his hands, not quite ready to fire, but not far from being able to be brought to bear at a moment's notice. Blanche followed him, then Brighton, who waited for her to pass through the doorway with a shudder. This is not a happy house, she confessed to the priest as she stuck close to him. Terrible things happened here. They had entered into a large, expansive hall. There really was no other way for Odette to describe it. The entire first floor was clear, save for 2 large curved stairs that led that led to the also mostly open second floor, only to curve once more and stop at a third, at which they ended into an extended balcony. The room would have been well to host parties or the like, but she doubted it had ever been used for such purpose. The air was full of dust, and the walls had once likely held paintings and tapestries were bare, the paint peeling away with time. Blanche stood just off to the center of the room, maybe an arm's length away from Price, who was scanning the room for threats, she was sure. She remained close to Father Brighton, noting that none of them had closed the front door behind them, and thankful for that known exit. It slammed shut with a bang so loud she thought that Price had fired his shotgun. Everyone in the room turned to stare at the door. Odette swallowed, and she closed her eyes to gather herself. She could feel the malice of the house starting to grow with the number of intruders in it, and she was pretty sure that if they tried the door, it would either be locked or worse, stuck. Milan, Price hissed at Blanche, but the professor just shrugged his shoulders. We're fairly high up in the mountains. It was probably just the wind, Blanche said as he moved to the door and, turning the knob, gave a firm shove. Then another. Then once more with his shoulder against it for good measure. Price, Brighton, would you mind assisting me? The two men moved away from Odette, moving to the door and to assist Blanche, but even with the three of them shoving, kicking, and otherwise slamming against the door, it would not budge. Price moved to point the shotgun at the knob, but Odette's hand on his shoulder stopped him, and he turned to give her a look. Don't, she breathed softly. You'll just make it more angry. Make what more angry? Price asked carefully. The house? Odette nodded. She could feel the house's anger at being invaded. There was something there, a malice that was deep and terrible, and she desperately wanted to escape. But she knew if they tried to force their way out, they would only be met with equal force. Something ancient and evil had invaded the house, had infected it with its psyche. She could feel it. There were others trapped here, likely members of the Abernathy family who had gotten too close to the truth. Blanche sighed and fished into his jacket pocket, pulling out a piece of chalk, began to mark around the doorway. It was a script that Odette did not recognize, and it made her head a little fuzzy to try to read it. So she stopped after one or two words. She did not like the feeling the house was giving her now. The more and more Blanche wrote, the more and more agitated the house became. She stepped back away from the door, and Price saw her moving and followed, tapping Father Brighton on the shoulder, and followed as well, though his face was creased into a frown. As the script was marked fully around the doorway, the professor began to speak. The words hurt her ears, made her want to grit her teeth and make him stop. They certainly agitated the house, and she felt it lash out. There was only a telltale creak before the floor gave way beneath him, and she could almost swear the edges of the wood came up like snapping jaws, sucking him down below without even a moment to scream. Can you find us a way out? Asked Price, his voice even and level. She nodded, unable to find words at the moment. She felt someone drape something over her shoulders. She reached up to feel the cool glass beads of a rosary. She looked up at Father Brighton, who was now looking at Price. Price nodded to her. Lead the way, he said, one hand lightly on her back, the other still holding the gun. She closed her eyes, fingers wrapping around the cool beads in her hand, as she extended herself out like she'd always done. She could feel the evil of the house around her, an angry, writhing bubble wanting nothing more than to pop and consume them all. The professor was very dead. She could see his broken body in the basement, impaled and broken on the spikes that had once been floorboards. She moved carefully, pressing and seeking out a weak spot. She heard Price swear once or twice in the dark, but she never lost him, nor Father Brighton. It felt like hours, but it must have been in far less than that, before they soon arrived in a place that was what she felt the weakest part of the bubble. Here the professor's little trick with the chalk and the words might have helped. Here was where the house was weakest. She opened her eyes and stood in an office, old, quiet, quite abandoned. An old man sat at the desk, a journal in one hand, a revolver in the other. He threw her the journal and she caught it. It felt heavy. It felt real and heavy in her hands. Why? She asked him. Because, fool that I was, I failed to protect this place, the old man said. I paid for it with my life. I will not see it take any more today. Thank you, she breathed, and opened the journal. Inside was a map to a servant's exit. They moved to follow it. Be wary, the old man said as they passed his desk. It will hunt you now. Move swiftly. Stop for nothing. We will, she said, and together the three broke through a side door and down a flight of stairs. She could feel the walls trying to close in on them now, heard footsteps from the hallway attached to the landing as they moved quickly. Price! A voice shouted from the hallway. Confound it, man! Come help me! Price jerked to move down the hall, but Odette grabbed his arm and tugged him away. He's gone, she breathed. That way is death. Price sighed, but nodded, and he kept up the rear. A moment later, the footsteps redoubled, moving faster. She heard the shotgun roar, and she pushed Brighton faster in front of her. Left they turned, then right. Every few minutes of their trip punctuated by a swearing Price and the loud roar of the shotgun behind them. Finally, she saw the door, reached for it, tore at the handle and pushed it out and open into the fresh air. It pulled against her hand, tried to slam shut behind her, but she threw her body into it, felt Brighton pass, saw Bryce in the doorway, shotgun raised as it barked once more, shells peppering something down the hallway, something human but inhuman, something that had been human and was no longer. He cleared the door with a leaping bound, and she let the handle go, rolling away as it swung closed with an almost magnetic force. They stood to the side of the front of the house, in a small parking lot meant for the house staff. She could see the truck, still waiting where they had left it. The house itself looked no different from this angle, no stranger than it had before. The three of them all looked at each other in silence. The professor, Odette began, but found she couldn't finish the thought. She had recognized the clothing of the thing that Price had shot before he had cleared the doorway. Price gave her a nod. Tragic accident, he said, in a voice rough and tired. We all saw the floorboards give way, but he could survive that kind of fall. The father nodded. She found herself nodding, but she knew. She'd seen what had become of the professor. She just hoped that nobody else would venture into the building anytime soon. She shuddered, and she started to make her way to the truck. In her hand was a journal. She realized dumbly that it had not vanished when they'd exited the house. She opened it up and blinked at the page. 1952. 05:15. You would think people would have learned by now to not go poking where they damn well don't belong. Already one life lost. Another one of those metaphysical types who think they understand the powers that they dabble in, but they only know the barest of truths. They have not yet seen what lies beyond the veil, and yet they think they can fight it? The girl, at least, had some sense to move away, seek out the safety of my domain. What little of that I can offer now. I will leave her the book, as that I was is all that I was is within, along with the true last will of Archibald Abernathy. Destroy this place. I care not how. Burn it. Bury it. This unholy place must no longer stand. Please, I beg you, destroy Abernathy Manor and all that it harbors. Odette offered the journal entry to Price to read, and he wrinkled his nose up and sighed. Let's get back into town, he said softly. I have a few calls I need to make anyway. One more won't hurt. The other two nodded, and they traveled in silence down the mountains. They arrived in town near dusk, and parked at the motel they had stayed at the night before on the professor's expense. This time Price paid. And after making a few phone calls, he saw each of them to their rooms. Odette busied herself with reading the journal, each entry speaking of wonders and horrors the likes of which she had never seen nor wished to see. When Price knocked on her door, she was quick to scramble out of the chair and meet him at the door. Before you ask, the answer is no, he told him as he stood there in the doorway. I'm not joining some crazy team to go around and stomp out paranormal issues. Good, because I wasn't going to ask you that, he said. May I come in? She nodded and moved out of the way to let him pass, and closed the door behind him before sitting down in her chair. He remained standing. Well? She asked him pointedly. Well, what? He asked in return. Are you going to admit that this whole thing was some American government program and that the professor was just some cover? She blurted out. She gave him credit. He laughed. No, Price finally managed after he stopped laughing. Blanche was a real professor. This was a real expedition of his own, with his own expertise. Probably on behalf of the British Secret Service, but I never asked. You served in the war together? Odette asked. If by served you mean kept the Nazis off his back while he went about stealing all of their information on metaphysics and the paranormal, then yes, Price offered. Saved me from some crazed Waffen-SS cultist scumbag with an axe to grind. Literally. So I owed him that much. But I never really understood the mumbo-jumbo stuff. Just that sometimes you can put bullets into it and it bleeds. But you didn't warn him when I pulled you away from the door? She asked. You knew I must have sensed danger there. He wouldn't have listened to me or you, Price sighed. If Blanche had one sin, it was hubris. He thought himself the only expert in his field worth a damn, steeped in the arcane and all that. Today he learned the hard way. So what now? Odette asked. We go our separate ways, Price told her. I go and enjoy my retirement on a farm somewhere, maybe fish. Father Brighton has his congregation. You have your carny shows. And the Abernathy estate? She asked quietly. Suffers a tragic accident when the 15th Bomber Wing accidentally drops a few live bombs on it. Oops. Price sighed. Like I said, I had to make some calls. Well then, Odette said, rising from her chair to move to the door. Then I think you can have a good night. Price nodded and, taking her cue, opened the door, turning to bow his head in his direction, turning to bow his head in her direction. Good night, he said, before turning away and heading into the evening as Odette shut the door behind him. I'm not done yet.
Hold on. Magnus, thank you for the follow.
Oh, nice.
Welcome to the Mothlight Manor. Thank you. Thank you for coming. We're in the middle of a story. I hope you enjoy.
The tail end of it. We are like maybe 3 paragraphs in, or left. I can English today. She returned to the journal, picking it up with her hand. She went into the bathroom and, taking out her book of matches, lit the corner of the book on the fire before throwing it in the bathtub and watching it burn. She washed I can definitely English today. She washed the ashes down the drain and then lit herself a cigarette and just relaxed in the chair. One day she would see Price again. She knew this. Maybe that time she would say yes. But not now. Not today. She let herself drift off in the chair, allowing herself some peace for once. For now. Until the next time. And that is the story of the Abernathy estate. It does in fact get very, very precisely bombed by the 15th Bomber Wing.
But the real question is, does it actually blow up?
Spoilers?
Yes.
Yes.
Sad. But does the thing that's in it die?
Now
That's a good question.
Next question.
Next question.
Next story. What happens to Odette now that she has the book? That's the next question.
Well, she did.
Burn it.
I mean, yeah, but... We got the book. You know that. We got the book. We gotta have time. There's too many campaigns, guys. Well, now that the story's over, I can do an actual, like, welcome to Magnus. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you enjoyed the last little bit of the story. I will be posting the VOD over on my YouTube channel, so you can catch the rest of it if you want. We had a good night of reading a bunch of stories and some poems, and I've been sitting here working on some drawing. This is going to be some art for a song that we're currently working on. So that will be fun once I can get this done. Oh god, Abernathy campaign. I mean, I mean, it might be fun. Wouldn't be, I mean, it'd be just about as bad as the, like, what was it, Crystal Museum thing that, the Critical Role team did. Or you can use my, my Hotel California idea. That one never got far, so... So what do y'all think? Do you think Tor should make like a collection of Eldritch like horror short stories and publish it? I think it would be great. I'd be 100% game for that. Yeah, see? Do it. Make time! November is coming. Or are you working on book 3? What is the plan for November? You don't know yet. You don't know yet. Why not? I don't know. Does Cthulhu offer more time? Is that how this works? No one wants a 36-hour day. That's... No, because all they do is make us work more. You know that. I mean, this is valid. I mean, I am also one of the reasons why he does not have time. Point being that I made him do this stream with me, and I think it has been absolutely wonderful. So, in the end, I win. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. What's the swearing for? What's the swearing for? Come on now. What, the friends thing? Yeah. Yeah, that'll do it. How dare you dare us to have friends? Oh God. Oh no. Oh no. You're just lucky that I don't stream the D&D games. That's all. You guys are just lucky on that. Mainly because I don't know how I would do it. Because, you know, remaining anonymous and all of that. You'd all have to have your own, like, avatars and everything. And then we'd have to, like, just shoot a picture of the table. Sad. I don't like watered down version of U12. I don't like it. We need like 100% authentic. I only like 100% authentic friend. 100% authentic friend. Ooh, diluted gasoline. No, no. You don't mix gasoline and water. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. So I gotta know, did you guys enjoy this type of stream? Would you like us to do more of these, more readings and things? I don't have like a whole bunch of my own writing that I can do, but I can draw while doing things. What last story? What last story? You wanna read? You wanna read last story? You can talk. You're in stream.
I mean, I am, but I'm also gonna get picked up by your mic, and I don't want people to have an echo. Since I can project my voice very well.
There, I can mute it when you start talking. Just tell me to mute.
I mean, I can do this, but it's kind of a pain in the butt for you. But
Mike, smacking my mic is so much fun, though. It's so much fun. Smack, smack.
okay, yes, I can read this last one, and we could probably wrap the stream up after that, maybe?
That sounds good for me, and we'll be able to find someone on tonight, because apparently I've got multiple friends streaming tonight, so that's actually really kind of fun. Because I think Nara is still streaming, and then Lilim is also streaming, so that would be fun. We could either, you know, raid the China the China butterfly, or we can raid the gargoyle after you're done.
We are spoiled for choice.
I like being spoiled. Spoiled is good. I like being spoiled a lot. You know this.
I mean, I do know this, yes. Alright, fine. I will read this last story. This one was awesome.
Spoiled for reading. Give me more reading, more creativity.
Okay, so this one was also another prompt story, funnily enough. The opening line is from a writing prompt, but the title of the story is The Princess of Corpses and Ruins. And that is all I'm going to give you guys as I launch into this. So just keep that in mind. Are you really still a princess, if your kingdom is in ruins? The man in the shining armor asked the woman seated upon the throne of shattered stone. If there is no one left to rule over but corpses? The woman upon the throne turned her eyes to the figure, eyes as red as fresh blood, deep and crimson and dark. Her skin was so alabaster pale as to be carved from marble, and had life breathed into it by the gods themselves. Each nail was filed to a perfect point, painted a purple so deep that it could almost be black. The same purple stained her lips, and if she wore any other makeup it could not be easily discerned against her perfectly pale skin. Her dress clung to her perfect form, slender in the waist, arms and fingers and stomach, but full in the breast, hips, thigh, and rear. Her calves were perfect hearts, and her golden sandals were wrapped around perfectly contoured feet and toes, each nail adorned with a royal purple to match her lips and fingertips. Even her dress, with a plunging neckline that exposed the maximum amount of pale flesh, was a deep purple, contrasting starkly against the pale alabaster of her skin and the gold of her jewelry. A diadem crown adorned her head, a single bloody ruby the size of a robin's egg at its center, cut into a perfect sphere. Heavy plated bangles adorned her wrists and ankles. Round her neck sat a single golden chain, another perfect sphere of blood ruby resting perfectly between her breasts. In her left hand she held a golden scepter. The side of each was covered in perfectly smooth cabochons of amethyst. In her right, a long golden blade stood bare, and the large garnets that adored the hilt seemed to weep blood that never seemed to touch her hand. She had not moved since they had entered the ruined palace. She had not even seemed to acknowledge them as they had made their way to the dais that held the shattered throne. Now the man in the shining armor had spoken. He had finally moved, turning those blood-red eyes on him and pinning him in place with a gaze alone. You speak as if you know me, sir. Her voice was a soft whisper, but it filled every corner of the now silent room. You act as if my kingdom is naught but dust, decay, and desiccation, that I rule over only ruin and rot, that not a single redeemable thing remains of my kingdom. The man in shining armor was silent. The rest of his group, 2 other men and 3 women, likewise found themselves unable to speak. The woman rose to her feet, and the man in the armor found himself looking up at her, as she now stood nearly twice his height above him. I am Princess Orphelia von Libertine, she declared in a voice that shook the room, the very air rippling as she spoke. I am the princess of corpses and ruins, for so long as I live, my kingdom survives. The man in the armor took a fearful step back at the motion, and the motion was immediately arrested by the woman's gaze. Her beauty was terrifying in its perfection, and the others felt the need to look away, to bow their heads or avert their gaze from her form. Why have you come to me? She asked the man in the armor. Other than to insult my kingdom. The man's face paled further, but he felt himself compelled to speak, even as he lowered his gaze from the woman. Princess Orphelia, he said in a voice that shook with fear. We have come to ask for safe passage through your lands. Our journey requires haste, and travel through your realm will speed our trip by more than half the time. Please, forgive my ill-chosen words. The shock of seeing the once great lands of Escalia, whose legends I had been raised on, brought so low, addled my brain. Her gaze remained perfect and impassive, but she nodded and sat once more upon the shattered throne. As the man began to relax, she spoke again. You may pass through my lands, she said in a quiet voice that filled the room. But one of your group must remain behind and attend to me until such time as you return. The man stiffened and began to open his mouth to speak, but he soon discovered the tip of the golden sword in his face. Choose your next words wisely, sir, Orphelia said in a cold, imperious tone. Your blood will not be the first I have spilled for insulting me, nor the last. I'll stay, Sir Gregory, said one of the men from the group, a younger man, barely of 18 summers if that. His clothing was roughed and patched, and he bore on his back a heavy pack of supplies. You will need Arthur's strength of arms more than my ability to carry supplies. Surely you will make better time without me slowing you down. The armored man thought for a moment, or he nodded his head. Then you shall remain until we return, Ansible, the man said, motioning for the other man in the group to shoulder the pack as he took a step from the princess and back down the dais toward the floor. Stay strong and true until then. The young man nodded his head, and the woman frowned, but moved along with the others as Sir Gregory turned to leave. I would advise you, sir, the cold voice of the princess filled the air, making the armored man freeze in place, to study manners and etiquette before you return, lest I take your head as recompense for your continued rudeness. I did not dismiss you, and yet you make to leave, thinking that trading off this boy for passage means that the deal is struck. Oh, do not turn back now, Sir Gregory. I know the full mark of you. The next time we meet, you had best mind your behavior, or I will have your head. Now, get out of my sight. The armored man ran, and the rest of his group moved swiftly to catch up with him, leaving the young man, Ansible, behind with the princess. They will not return for you, the princess said, with a finality that had the young man turn to look at her on the throne once more. They view me as something to be bargained with, a force of nature that must be swayed so that they may continue. They will not return this way. They will speak bravely of your sacrifice, but that is all they will do. Ansible moved over to the throne, kneeling before it in the way that he had been taught by his peasant parents before he had been taken into Sir Gregory's service as a page boy. I know that I am of little use to them, Or you, my lady, he said gently. I am weak, slow, and dim-witted. What labor would you have me do, so that I might properly earn my meager keep? You would serve me, knowing that your life has been traded away, Ophelia asked the young man. That your allies have betrayed you, left you here thinking that I will likely kill you in some horrific fashion and turn you into one of the corpses over which I rule? It is the role of the weak to serve the strong, Ansible said. Just as I served Sir Gregory by volunteering the weakest of his number to remain behind, so as to no longer be a burden to his mission. Tell me a task, and I will see it done. If I commanded you to die, Ophelia asked, would you carry out this service? The young man paled, but reached into his belt and pulled out a dagger. Unsheathing it, he held up the shining blade for her to see. You need only command me to, and I shall plunge this blade into my heart. He did not even see her move, and the blade was out of his hand. The tall, pale woman now standing and holding it in her hand. The sword that she had been holding before rested perfectly across the arms of the throne, along with the scepter. She turned it over for a long moment, before she sheathed the blade and handed it back to the young man. Your theatrics are unnecessarily, if wryly amusing, she spoke softly, but I do think you will join my court of corpses. With a smooth motion of her hand, a snap of perfect fingers, there came, not a snap, but a peal of a large bell. From the ruins around them, through doorways, ravaged holes in the walls, and other means, people emerged from seemingly nowhere. Human people. Dressed in a variety of attire, as she smiled as they all assembled to attend her. We welcome another to our ranks, Ophelia said, with a smile as she pushed Ansible toward the group. This is Ansible, a brave young man who is willing to give up much to help others. Auric, I want you to take him on as an apprentice, if you would please. I have a dire shortage of proper knights, and he has the makings of a good one. An older man came forward with a nod, clad in armor that Ansible did not recognize. He gave the young man a smile and tugged him lightly on the arm. Come along, lad, he said to him. We have a lot of training to do to get you in fighting shape, and I'm going to at least find you something that fits you, so you'll be properly presentable for this evening. Ansible felt so lost and confused as he looked around at the host that had sprung up seemingly out of nowhere to attend the princess in what appeared to be a full court. I thought Ascalia was dead, he managed to ask Auric as the man led him into an archway and down a dimly lit pathway. And yet, there is a full court of people here to attend the princess? The kingdom of Ascalia fell. Sure as the ruins you're walking on, Auric said. Though I suppose Our Lady does have a point. So long as she lives, Ascalia lives on in her. He shot the boy a grin. She is the last of the Ascalians, after all, but that is not to say that humanity can't serve our betters, now can we? So, people do live here, Ansible offered dumbly, feeling somewhat stupid. We serve the princess, yes, Auric offered with a nod. We are her court of corpses, those who were given to Ascalia for safe passage through their lands. As far as I know, nobody has ever returned for anyone they've left behind, so we've made new lives for ourselves here, serving the princess until such time as our bodies fail us and we return to the earth. And no one has ever left of their own accord to try and find the people who have left them behind? Yes, the older man. Even if only to, I don't know, get even with being abandoned? Why bother? Auric said with a grin. Before they came out into a sunny courtyard, and Ansible froze. Well, not the most educated of young men, Ansible had a decent eye for and a good knack to guess how many people were in a given area, something he'd picked up from his father according to his mother. He stood in awe at the city that stood before him, bustling with thousands of people. We have everything we could ever want here, after all. Ansible stood for a few more moments, gawking at the city that had been hidden by barely 20 feet of stone. Stone that Sir Gregory had been sure was haunted given the sounds of people moving in a place that was supposedly long dead. Seeing the trick of it now, Ansible had to laugh. Fools. All of them fools. Save for those who were left behind, and given a second chance at life. A better life. He straightened up and followed Sir Auric into the city, looking forward to his second chance, his fresh start. And that's the Kingdom of Ascalia.
I like that one. Very, very much a nice turnaround on that one. Sometimes your knights in shining armor are not the brightest bulbs in the bunch. Especially in this case.
Yeah, that one was fun. I like the random prompts. The random prompts have always given me like really good stuff to work off of.
Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to come up with an idea. So, what can you do, right? You find a prompt, you go with it, and sometimes really good things come out of it.
True words.
Truer words were never spoken. Let's see. I think this is where we're gonna end it for the night then, guys. I do see that we have a couple of people on right now. So we're gonna... Who do we want to bother? Who do we want to bother? I love bothering people. So we got a gargoyle, we got a butterfly. Looks like Felina is on. How dare you duck and run? So rude. I think I'm gonna go raid into Nara and see how she's doing. So thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. I had so much fun and I really want to be able to do it again. So maybe maybe for Christmas, maybe we'll do some sort of reading. Make this kind of a holiday thing if we can find some good things to read. And we can go from there. Maybe we'll have a Fae reading of Night Before Christmas and see how that goes. But thank you guys again. I'm Laria Maplemoth, and this is my husband Torvil. He did a lot of fun stories for us tonight. We're gonna send you over to my friend Nara Chocho, and looks like she's playing Guild Wars 2 tonight. So go, be nice, be kind, love on her as much as you can, and we'll see you next time. Bye.